long ago. There's an evil that's been dreaming, but now it's softly screaming. From the darkness, their power will grow. Their voices are made of poison. When you listen, you are sure to be disturbed. You can lock your doors. You can say your prayers. No creature can resist their wicked words. Never mind, no need to worry. That's all just a story of the whispers of the old gods.
Welcome everyone to another day of StarLadder I-League Season 2. I'm Noxious, and with me is Firebat, casting the last bracket that we've got for the last chance qualifier. How are you doing on this fine morning, good sir?
Doing pretty good. Just got a cat, though, so I didn't really sleep very much, because got this new baby kitten, and it was up literally almost all night, just constantly meowing, so I'm a little bit tired, but nonetheless happy and excited to be here, casting StarLadder with you.
Yeah, there's 4 players today on the second bracket of the last chance qualifier. Again, we had yesterday Stan Sivka qualifying through. This time around, we'll have Naiman, Thijs, Life Coach, and Surrender battling for that last spot to go to the actual event, the line event, that is. So Naiman and Thijs will be the first match we cast, followed by Life Coach and Surrender. So these guys have all played in the group stage of the event, and they've been basically losing, at least on the last portion they lost. And as a result of that, they have to battle for that last spot. Thijs and Naiman, by the way, are 2 BlizzCon qualifiers, so they're already doing pretty well in the Hearthstone scene, but funny enough that they would end up, both of them, in the same bracket against one another for the last chance.
Yeah, in the losers bracket, not the place you'd expect to see 2 European champions. We have a European champion for winter and a European champion for spring with Naiman and Thijs, and they're facing off against each other here. They're going to be probably facing off again at BlizzCon later on this year, right? So it'd be a good start for one of the 2 of them to just get in the other one's head, get it up on the scoreboard against each other for when they have to compete later on at BlizzCon.
Yeah, one of the things that I want to see is whether or not Thijs' lineup will be different than what he brought, as we saw him recently do so in the EU Championship. He brought a lineup that seemed very solid all around, but I wonder if he's going to reconsider. It is the best of 7 with 1 ban, so they will be bringing 4 decks each, 5 classes each, that is, with one of them being banned, so they have to win with the other ones. It's kind of difficult, I think, in the best of 7 to keep your focus up all the way through, especially with the length of the brackets. The way this bracket works is kind of lengthy, because if you win the first match and the second one, yes, you go to the winner's final to get to that last spot, but there's a chance that you end up being knocked back down, and that means you pretty much always have to win 3 matches in a row.
It's a lot of best of 7s to have to win, especially when you're getting rope coached in at least one of them, So it could be very mentally draining moving forward, but these are professional players. Obviously, they're equipped to deal with the situation. But going back to lineups, I do feel Thijs is going to play a similar decks as what we've been seeing from him lately. I've casted him in like 4 tournaments now, including the group stage of StarLadder, EU versus CN, and he is almost always, definitely always brought Tempo Warrior. So Tempo Warrior is got to be one of Thijs' favorite decks. He's always brought Reno Warlock. So he's just and he's always brought Rogue. So he's brought in 3 of the same decks to every single tournament I've casted him in. He's kind of just in love with those decks at the moment, so I expect we'll see them again here. Meanwhile, Naiman, I haven't seen too much from him, but every time that I've seen him play, he's played different decks. So he's more of a wild card in my opinion, and I'm interested to see what he'll be bringing.
Yeah, for some reason, every time I see Naiman play, Freeze Mage seems to show up. I don't know if that's something that you've noticed as well, but it's one of the decks that he plays the most that I have seen, at least in tournament settings. I'm not exactly sure how well it fares here. We saw yesterday Oskalka bring it, and the results weren't exactly as good as he hoped for, right? Like, the value of that deck in the current metagame, debatable at best. And with Warriors everywhere, you have to ban a Warrior, which means if there's another deck that is a problem for your Freeze Mage, suddenly you might end up being roadblocked at the chokehold, basically. There's no way you can actually push through with Freeze Mage if 2 decks beat you.
Sure, yeah. Oskaga never got, strangleholded on the Freeze Mage. It always ended up getting a win, but I don't think it ever got a win on the first try. So it always dropped at least 1 game for him in the best of 7 series, and that can be a pretty big liability if that trend seems to continue for Freeze Mage. It's definitely not one of the highest win rate decks of the group from yesterday, but the thing about yesterday's group, we had Stan Sivka, we had Kalento, we had all these control players that are all that played all control basically, which is something that Freeze Mage most of the time can kind of struggle with, especially if you're teching it more towards the aggro approach, which it seemed like Osaka kind of was, with a lot of defensive cards in it. So it's definitely a deck that's super polarized, and it has to be set up in the right position to deal with either aggro or control, and you hope the group is playing that. And from this group, what do you expect to see, more aggro or control?
Well, with Surrender being, I think Surrender might be the one who brings the most aggressive lineup. I've seen him bring a lot of Hunter. I've seen him bring Rogue very consistently. He's not afraid of playing some of the aggressive lists. On the flip side, Life Coach is a very control-heavy player. Thijs tends to err on the same area as well. Naiman also could be bringing like mid-range aggro lineup, but given the fact that a lot of the tempo decks that you can build nowadays, I don't know if we'll see any Cthulhu, but a lot of the tempo decks you can bring can always be a bit pushed towards control, yet still do well against some of the aggressive decks that we have nowadays. It's kind of difficult to see a pure aggro lineup. Like, I don't imagine anybody's going to bring a full face lineup. It would be very surprising to me.
Yeah, aggro has kind of like changed with Whispers of the Old Gods and Standard, and it's gone from things like Face Hunter and those sort of aggro decks into Tempo Warrior now being considered an aggro variant. It's more like a mid-range deck, but we just kind of call it the aggro lineup because it's the most aggressive of what works, basically. And all of these players that are in this group have played Tempo Warrior in the previous group stage. And all of the players in the last group, pretty much except for Colento, I think played Control Warrior. So it's kind of different to see this group be a little bit more aggressive than the previous group. And
I mean, that wouldn't be too bad either. We saw Stancevko with what looked to be the single slowest lineup we'd had in the entire event so far. So we'll see if Life Coach decides to bring something along those lines. You mentioned Life Coach was focusing a lot on N'Zoth Rogue, so that could be cool. That being said, Naiman versus Thijs, the players are getting ready. We've got Mage, Shaman, Paladin, and Warrior from Naiman. I've got a hunch that this Mage is probably going to be more on the control side, like Freeze Mage. But we've seen a lot of good results from people playing Yogg-Saron Mage, at least on ladder. And that could be a big upset if that came up.
Yeah, most definitely. Yogg-Saron Mage actually doing a lot of work. Hotform being able to take #1. Wrote a nice little guide about his deck. Pretty interesting tech in there with extra draw added to more consistently Yogg-Saron. I don't think that's a sentence I ever thought I was going to say, but...
Sure. I mean, it's not really that, but the thing is, the card itself, it has a lot of variance, but it's always going to bring you back statistically more likely from a bad situation into a winning one, but you rarely ever play it when you're winning. So it's the kind of last-ditch effort card when you're playing up against a bad matchup. Thijs is bringing a lineup that is pretty much identical to what he had.
Well, he has a priest.
No surprise there. There's a priest I think the priest might be the only surprise from Thijs. I don't think I've seen him play an exceptionally large amount of priests in the past.
Yeah, with a Warlock ban and bringing priest makes me want to think it's probably the Cthulhu priest.
Right.
Yeah, because other versions of priest typically do pretty well against Warlock, but he's expecting a Reno Lock coming out from Naiman, so he's just banning away the Warlock, because Reno Lock is going to have a very easy time dealing with Priest if it is that burst variant Reno Lock, so banning that out of the way to pave the way for his Priest to get a win. But first match, we have Naiman on the Tempo Mage. Looks like it is the Hotform-esque Yogg-Saron Mage with the double Acolyte of Pain for added cycle and lots of cheap one-mana spells to just keep a lot of early pressure and aggression going on against Thijs' Miracle Rogue. And Thijs does not have the fastest Miracle Rogue start in the world, and sometimes the mage can just kind of pull one over on you because you don't have any taunts, you have very limited heal, and their deck does a lot of damage with all of the spell power, with all of the Flamewaker effects, and even Yogg-Saron can deal damage, and it runs 2 torches as well, the Tempo Mage, most of the time. Each of those torches can be counted as like 9 damage because you got the front half and the second half, and then also 2 fireballs, 2 frostbolts, and sometimes people squeeze in ice lances occasionally, and that's some damage.
Yeah, one of the things that the Tempo Mage does nowadays is it's actually a lot less about tempo. You know, we used to refer to Tempo Mage as this, mech mage type deck that we had in the GBG era. Nowadays, it's more about getting a sick Flamewaker turn and beating your opponent down little by little and finishing them off with spells at the top end. But it can be very bursty, which isn't something you'd expect out of a tempo deck necessarily. So the way it plays nowadays might be more akin to some kind of like halfway between control and aggression. Like it's more of an aggro control list.
Sure, yeah, just rides the edge between aggro and control. Naiman here, he has the option to go with Flamewaker, but I don't think you want to be playing out the Flamewaker here. Even though you did see an Eviscerate come out from Tice, you still just want to be establishing your card draw and save Flamewaker for when you can actually remove something with it. So I would really like to see him just play Acolyte of Pain and pass. He can be a bit patient with his Flamewaker, build up those spells, and then kill things with it instead of just sending missiles to the face right now. Although it is some juicy face damage.
One of the things that you do not get to do as a mage, assuming you're playing up against Miracle Rogue, is deal with an Auctioneer anymore. Flame Cannon's gone, Bomb Lover's gone, Loatheb is gone, so you really have only the Flamewaker Arcane Missiles as a really easy way to do so if they get it stealthed up. The problem is holding on to these cards for long enough can be difficult, assuming you don't have enough card draw. But with the Acolyte of Pain, I think you're right. It lets him just be patient, get the ping, get an extra draw, 2 draws total out of the Acolyte, get a Drake out. He's likely to find another 3 to 4 draws before he's got to play this Flamewaker.
Yeah. Yeah, Naiman's in a pretty good spot here. If I were him, I think I would just save the Flamewaker stuff as well this turn, ping the Acolyte of Pain just to accelerate my draw a little bit, Frostbolt the Tomb Pillager so it can't pop my O2s, and then just ignore it and go face so I don't give my opponent the coin for being able to do nasty things with the coin, and be super patient and accumulate more Flamewaker value. But he's just going to go off. Well, it looks like
he's going to pull the trigger.
Yeah, he's feeling like he wants to get feisty with it, so he's just going to go in now and...
All right, so that means that he wants to play on curve, with the coin possibly being used this turn just to get another hit on the Tomb Pillager, then follow it up with a Drake, and cycle over the course of the next turns instead. Because he knows on turn 5, usually the Rogue doesn't do much with the coin, since usually you want to play the Auctioneer first, so unless you've got a preparation with Conceal, or with an Eviscerate in this case, you often have to use this coin for a bit later.
Yeah, and the aggressive playstyle here is going to work out for Naiman. Tice doesn't have great ways to deal with that Flamewaker. He can Shadow Strike it, but then he's not developing anything, and he feels it's more important to be developing his minions. He has 2 Drakes in his hand. He just wants to get them out on the field and cause problems for Naiman, so he's going to forgo removing the Flamewaker just to cycle his deck, go with his game plan, and get his minions out there.
What do you think about coin concealing your Drake just to make sure you have the spell damage next turn? Because assuming you do pick up preparation, say on the draw or off the other Drake, you could prep a Fan of Knives, or you could just simply play Shadow Strike with SI, and that would clean up most of the board. And that spell damage can be really good with the Fan of Knives he's got in hand.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. So, Naiman does have 4 missiles that could snipe this Drake potentially, but it's just not very good odds of happening. So, just going to ping the Acolyte, cycle, try and find more burn spells, and then plop down minions, go face.
Yeah, the question is how worried is Naiman about some kind of AoE effect? If you see the opponent stealthing up a Drake, you have to assume there might even be a double Fan of Knives, right? So if the spell damage is that valuable to your opponent where he would use a coin to stealth up a Drake, there must be something in there that you've got to be worried about.
Yeah, I guess that's why he chooses to forgo playing the Azure Drake this turn. It looked like he was really trying to set up playing his Azure Drake, and because of the stealth Drake here, he opts to just hold it back. And Tice a little bit shaking his head there with the Drake getting pinged. He really wanted to be able to Fan of Knives and then just trade his Drake for value into the Flamewaker, and now he's kind of unable to do that because it'll die.
Yeah, I mean, you can get the Fan of Knives to get rid of the images and the Acolyte of Pain, but you do give your opponent a card draw, and that means your only way to stay on the board is to either pick up another Fan of Knives, which saves your Drake, or to use the SI7, and even that doesn't feel too good. Backstab on the draw. Typical Hearthstone luck.
Yeah.
Can't even attack with his dagger to finish off the Mana Worm.
Naiman has a really great turn coming up. He can use Azure Drake to give his Arcane Blast spell power and take care of this SI7 if he wants to. 1 mana, 4 damage. Pretty good card.
Yeah, sounds pretty reasonable when you've got Azure Drake in your deck.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's playing the Cold Sorcerer, or if that deck foregoes the use of that 2-drop for spell damage.
Yeah, typically speaking, it does play the 2 Cold Sorcerers and a Blood Mage Thalnos. And then the 2 Azure Drakes. So you just always have that Arcane Blast live and super powerful.
Alright, well the Drake needs to be dealt with from Tice's perspective. He did see a few spells already, but no Forgotten Torch, no Fireballs. So if damage were to come in through this Drake, it would be a lot of it. Because at 20 health, this is kind of where the damage starts stacking up a bit too much if Burst comes in.
And you can kill it so cleanly here. The Shadow Strike works wonders, and you're able to establish the Tomb Pillager so you can get a coin for your gadgets and Auctioneer. It's very nice.
So I imagine we could see Water Elemental with Arcane Intellect, but killing the 5/4 I think with the Fireball might feel a bit more appealing, because you do develop another Flame Waker. Your opponent had no good answer to it seemed, on the past turn.
Yeah, it's a bit passive. I don't know, but we do put out the threat for there, so Tice has to find a way to deal with this. He has Ezra Drake Backstab in his hand, but then he's forgoing a lot more spells with Gadgets and Auctioneer. Like, every turn that he's playing a bunch of spells and not playing Gadgets and Auctioneer, it's potentially getting worse in his hand, but picking up that preparation and having that coin, Gadget's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, one of the things that the play Naiman did is, you mentioned it was passive. One of the things it does, assuming the Flame Waker somehow lives or takes a lot of resources from your opponent if they don't have backstab, is it lets you play the Drake and the Arcane Intellect on the following turn to reload. The only issue is reloading when the opponent's got a board is, again, another passive follow-up. So the more of these you make against a rogue who's going to get tempo, the more likely you are to get bursted down. Alright, so Drake versus Mana Worm Water Elemental. Sap being an issue. What's your play?
I'd prefer holding on to the Drake, extending the 2 minions, but the problem is the Mana Worm doesn't contest anything very nicely. It's just mainly the fact that you get Water Elemental out there and force your opponent to have saps instead of just being able to kill your minion with pretty much anything, because a rogue with spell power does not struggle at killing a 4/4 a lot of times.
Right, it seems like one of the easiest ways for them, one of the easiest things for them to kill. Double preparation for Tice. He's got the coin, he's got the preps. Any spell drawn after this will be playable, and that'll cycle his deck a ton.
Yeah, and this is before the Yogg-Saron can come out, so he's got to be feeling pretty good about that. And both Flame Wakers are gone from Naiman, so a lot of these cheap spells that Naiman has are just not going to be very useful.
Deadly Poison, it doesn't feel amazing, but it's a spell you're going to be able to cycle, and you don't want to prep a prep. And wow, he can actually use his dagger to kill the Drake here if he wants.
I guess.
Yeah, if he wants to use the other Deadly Poison, or pick up an Abyss off the top, that would also work out. Okay, that might take
Yeah, I think
the
you
play
just trade,
instead.
yeah, just trade the Drake and Cold Blood seems pretty reasonable.
Right.
Isn't able to find great ways to clear the minion, but is able to get it done with just the trade.
So with Leroy Jenkins in hand, and the Deadly Poison, he's got lethal next turn, assuming the 7/3 does not die. And that's one turn before Yogg-Saron, so Naiman has to pick up something to answer this. He does find the Forgotten Torch.
Yeah, he just needs to be as defensive as possible this turn and put his faith in the Yogg in the following turn.
Yeah, I mean, there's a play with the Cold Sorcerer, Arcane Missiles, and Forgotten Torch. So there is a way for him to kill likely a few of those 1/1s and kill the 7/3 as well.
Well, I don't even think you play the Call Sorcerer. I think you hold it back and just do the missiles and then
do the
ping.
missiles and the ping? Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
just make sure you can clean as many things up as possible. Unless you want to kill the Gadget instead of the 7/3, but I think you'd rather just kill the 7/3.
Yeah, I think not dying is a pretty good game plan.
Well, which one doesn't kill you? You know, you take 3 more damage if you leave up the 7/3, but your opponent doesn't draw their deck, so maybe he's right on this, just taking care of the Gadget here.
And that's a lot of 1/1s dead, so 3 of them down, and we're looking at a total of 11 on the board with the Leroy. That's another 10, so that's GG right there. Naiman takes it.
No, Tice takes it.
No, Naiman takes it. Well, he takes it to the face, let's put it that way.
There you go.
Just change the narrative a little bit. It evens out. I think Tice, even if the 7/3 had been killed, still had lethal with a Deadly Poison. If I'm not mistaken, it was another 2 damage, so he lost 3 but picked up an extra 6 anyway.
Yeah, it's a tricky matchup there. We saw in the beginning, Naiman came out to a really fast start, put in a lot of work early on, but the thing was, he was using his missiles, he was using his blasts and his Flame Waker, and he wasn't really getting that much value out of it. He was doing a lot of face damage, which didn't actually end up helping him at the end of the day because he wasn't able to string together enough fireballs and things like that to actually kill Tice. So there's reasons there that they're like Tempo Mage in this matchup needs to be a little bit more patient or a bit aggressive, and you got to walk along that line to make sure your cards actually get value without your RNG pings extending into becoming just face damage, which doesn't help you maintain board. And then you run out of cards, don't trade resources efficiently, and it gets weird. And we saw a little bit of that happening earlier on with some of the Flame Waker turns, I think.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the fact that the Flame Wakers were played a bit too quick. I'm not exactly sure how I would have played it the same if I would have played the same way, but it feels like Flamewaker is meant to be used for a crazy burst turn as opposed to whittling down your opponents. Although one of the things that a lot of people mention when they play those types of decks is that the Flamewaker is mostly there as a threat. You put it down, and if it's not answered, then all the better. But it's not the essential portion of your deck. It's meant to be there as an added bonus. But you really rely on the card cycle. So Acolytes of Pain, the Arcane Intellect. You're looking for any type of card draw with the Drakes, and then finish off with the Oxeron. Ideally, I think he might have been able to wait 1 or 2 more turns with the Flamewakers at any point to get a bit more damage output. He's going to requeue the deck into the Zoo from Thijs. It's not Reno Log this time.
Yeah, that's really strange. He has to be expecting Reno Lock. Thijs plays so much Reno Lock. It's by far one of the decks he plays the best, and it's one of his favorite decks. He talks about Reno Lock all the time, but no Reno Lock here. Very interesting to see. I've never seen Thijs play Zoo before, and I've casted Thijs in a lot of events.
I've seen him play it once. I think it might have been in StarLadder as well a long time ago, but is that a surprising factor? I think it happened once in the Archon Team League. Once. But
has it happened in 2016 yet? Is this a 2016 first for Thijs?
I think it might be. Lots of. I mean, there's not that many firsts for Thijs this year. Just gets another European title, no problem.
Yeah, a lot of repeats, honestly. Disappointing, Kappa.
Yeah, disappointing, Thijs. Come on, you're just winning again.
Too much repeats. You gotta keep it new and fresh. Come on, man.
Naiman is a little bit
gotta play
puzzled,
right?
I imagine. Yeah, it just feels a little bad given the fact that you know full well you would have loved to have any type of removal. Arcane missiles would have been gorgeous. Anything, even mirror image would have been insane here. Just the ability to make sure you protect your minions. But in this spot, you expect to be surrendering your board to whatever Zoo does.
Yeah. Well, he's not in the worst of spots. Thijs doesn't have great ways to trade up here. Sometimes you'll have like a Direwolf Alpha in this situation and just blow out the Tempo Mage opponent, but he's got to kind of play Abusive Sergeant off curve here to get the value trade, and then he's not developing his other minions. But he does have a Dark Peddler to come down on 3 and use up all of his mana, so it's not too shabby.
Oh, wow. That draw right there for Naiman is the draw that might define the way this game goes, because based on his current hand state, one of the options was ping the 3-1, pass your turn, and do nothing, which felt horrible.
Well, I think that might
this
still
time
be
around,
play.
You could do it still, yeah. I mean, there's no problem. You can always wait 1 turn to play the Sorcerer.
Yeah, he is just going to play the missiles out here and then the ping. Okay. Yeah, the missiles to kill a 2-1, though. So that's the thing. You got to evaluate your RNG effects, and the higher chance you have it... Well, the higher chance you have that the missiles go face, that's the more of the card that you're actually wasting when you could take 2 damage and you play it for 0 mana on a later turn, where lower chance that it goes face and wastes some of the effect of the card. So it's an interesting thing to think about in Tempo Mage. It's not.
I like that. That's a
play
that's a
all
good
your
point.
cards. You know, it's a very patient deck with a lot of your removal, in my opinion. Wow, that Acolyte gets some sick value here.
Yeah, I was thinking, basically, either it eats up a PO and still cycles a card, or it draws 2 cards, and the Zoo player equalizes the card advantage he's supposed to have in favor of the Tempo Mage, which is not something he wants to be doing.
Yeah, it is not pretty.
Do you just double juggle?
Double juggler, all face. Alright. Voidwalker's not too bad of a card. You run 2 of them in your deck, so it's not bad to get 1 for free. Corruption
is a cheap removal piece, but definitely not the card you want to be picking up here. And it looks like the Voidwalker was hanging around for a little bit. Middle of the screen there. So Naiman, at this point, does not run any AoE in that deck that I know of, unless he's running a top-end Flame Strike as a one-of sometimes. There's no Frostbolt in his hand, so any type of removal he does is going to be contingent upon those Forgotten Torches doing work.
Yeah. He needs to find that Flame Waker. He needs to find that card draw. I like getting that Acolyte of Pain out there. The first one got so much work done. Second one probably will get a similar amount of work done, assuming Thijs doesn't find a good top deck here, and it's to remove some pressure from the board, and just is accumulating spells to go with his Sorcerer's Apprentice. And if he finds a Flame Waker, a bunch of spells, and a Sorcerer's Apprentice, that's when he can have that one big swing turn, which is just going to seize board control away from the Zoolock and allow him to come back on this board and win the game. You just need that one big turn.
Wow, unbelievable draw there. I thought he would use the 2/2 to sacrifice it into the Acolyte to deny the card draw
Yeah.
as much as possible, but he opted to get the juggles, all the juggles, and that leaves him vulnerable to a lot of the removal that the mage might be holding. However, as we can see here, even though there's a lot of spells, mana efficiency-wise, they don't feel the best. So you'd have to throw down Sorcerer's Apprentice, play Double Torch to get rid of the jugglers, and Arcane Blast to kill the 2/2.
Yeah, this is the most defensive play on the turn, but this does limit Naiman's ability to come back on the board. I guess he's just going to be fighting for board with Water Elementals from this point moving forward, but
That's not too bad. It's
not too bad.
It's all right.
They're 3/6s, so they do contest Zoo's minions quite nicely.
One of the big drawbacks of Zoo against Mage in these situations is the mages nowadays, like the Tempo Mage, play minions that are very bulky, like on the turn 4. Instead of being sticky, they're just huge. That means you have to use your Power Overwhelmings. Because your minions aren't as sticky as they used to be, that means you end up losing a lot of board control. So you have to life tap for those Forbidden Rituals, which are of limited effect against mages sometimes, and they pick up Flame Waker turns or Arcane Missiles. It's really tricky for the Zoo player to navigate this.
Naiman's getting pretty close to lethal here. 18 damage in his hand currently.
You life taps.
Tice and
Could be over.
could be weird.
I mean, if that Drake lives, we know what's up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you play Doomguard? You've seen 2 torches, no Frostbolts. Probably.
You probably don't want to lose the cards in
Yeah.
your hand. You probably go Imp Gang Boss, Argent Squire, Power Overwhelming the Voidwalker, trade the Voidwalker in, and then the
Yes.
following turn you can play your minion in Doomguard.
I mean, I might not use PO here, depending.
I don't know, Drakes are scary. I'd be tempted to do it. So Naiman can set up lethal here.
The question is, does he die, right? That's the thing he wants to know.
Well,
Am I dead if I set up lethal? Mirror Image
got the
has to be
images,
60
yeah.
alive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he gets the trade with the Drake, and then he has the Cult Sorcerers plus Fireball or Fireball Ping to finish off the game next turn. Tice leaving that Drake up may just be what put him in a bad situation here. He may not have had a good chance in the game regardless of if he killed it or not, but tough to say.
So you can kill the images, but the amount of damage you can push is limited to 11. So he'd have to life tap, and even then, no more mana to play anything else. That draw here had to be something like a Power Overwhelming number 2, and that would have been the game. But it was another Doomguard.
Yeah.
Alright, well, Tice can't afford playing around the lethal that could be coming out from his opponent. Then again, when you do take 2 fireballs in the face at this stage, you must be assuming something else is lurking in that hand that's going to kill you, whether it's a Roaring Torch that he just drew, or as the second fireball he's been holding on to.
Yeah, usually people don't double Fireball you in the face without a plan, but it happens sometimes, so...
I mean, you
Play it
might
out.
hope it doesn't... Yeah, exactly. You might hope it doesn't happen. Rather unlikely, but...
So Tice setting up his own lethal now.
And Naiman will keep going and doing what he was doing already. So the Zoolock ends up dying to the Tempo Mage. I'm not sure how I feel about the matchup. I feel like the Tempo Mage usually has less of a board than the Zoo player and ends up getting blown out of the game by these openers.
Usually, the way this matchup works out, and we saw it being a little weird here, where Tice did not have any way to buff his minions to kill Acolyte of Pain. That was the game-deciding moment there. Naiman's Acolyte of Pain's got 2 cards in the first one, 3 cards on the second one. Typically, if Tice had, like, Direwolf Alpha, Abusive Sergeant, Dark Iron Dwarf, Defender of Argus on any of those turns, he could have traded his minions up into the Acolyte of Pain, giving Naiman only 1 draw off the Acolyte of Pain, which is very painful for the Tempo Mage in this matchup. The fact that you spend 3 mana to just kind of not influence the board at all and only draw 1 card, because the Zoo has the board and gets the favorable trades in the Acolyte of Pain constantly, puts out a lot of pressure on you so you don't have time to Acolyte of Pain ping. So your card draw engine usually gets pretty shut down by the Zoolock. But not in this case. Tice just didn't have any buff cards.
Yeah, it's one of those matches, and we saw that happen yesterday as well, where Zoo just did not find Abusive Sergeants, no Direwolf Alphas on time. Even Defenders of Argus usually end up carrying the mid-game for Zoo, but Tice will be playing as Shaman up against Naiman Shaman. I'm assuming both of them are playing an aggressive list of sorts. The Sir Finley and the Tunnel Shrug on the opener for Tice are pretty sweet. I want to know whether or not either of them is playing a hybrid version with Thing from Below, which is essentially the same as aggro.
Yeah, I think most people now are starting to play that list over the just pure face list. I haven't seen anyone play the pure face list in actually quite a long time in tournament play. It's just been the things from below, hybrid aggro shaman pretty much at every tournament, or mid range.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting choice.
Sometimes people play the old concede shaman with the elemental destructions and whatnot. Just doesn't really matter what you play in your shaman deck. As long as you got shaman class cards, you'll probably do all right.
You're likely to be able to get a legend with a mix of any 30 class cards, including, but not limited to, Ancestral Healing and Totemic Might. You can play those too. I'm sure you could win enough times to hit legend with those cards.
Yeah, I had 65% win rate playing double Totemic Might in my aggro shaman.
The tempo value.
Hey, dude, the tempo swing's insane.
Did you call your deck Totempo?
No, I called it Totemic Might, the little totem emote.
Sure, typical fire badges, cool memes, all the way through. Nice draw there by Naiman. Does pick up the abusive for later. One of the upsides of having the Ardent Squire in the early game is those decks, when you're in the mirror match, do not tend to run Earthshock, so it always sticks around.
Yeah, we saw yesterday a lot of players actually teching in the Earthshock, so not today yet though. We haven't seen any Earthshocks, but it's interesting.
And look at that. The abusive acting as an additional Flame Tongue totem. Although I guess with the Tunnel Shrug being picked up, you might just go abusive, Tunnel, and Lightning Bolt. On turn 4, you're overloaded, but that doesn't matter. And on turn 5, you're free to play the Doomhammer. Do you think playing your 3 cards here is better?
So you want to play all of your cards and then go face?
Yeah.
As face shaman?
Sounds good.
Seems like a good play.
Do you approve? Do I get the Firebat stamp of approval on my face play?
Yeah.
All right.
Seems terrific. All right. So what is the best way for Tice to try and swing back this board?
Coining a 4-mana 7/7 and then pinging on turn 4 to kill one of the 1 health minions sounds reasonable, but he doesn't know if Naiman's holding on to something that can be played for 3 with the overload. But I don't think you can afford playing around that.
Yeah, I think that you got to go with the 4-mana 7/7 here. You've seen an abusive sergeant from your opponent, so you can assume that there are no hexes in his deck. Most of the time, that's kind of a staple thing in the shaman decks right now. All the aggressive versions play abusive. None of the mid-range play abusive, and none of the aggressive ones play hex. We are going to see the Argent Horse Rider come out over the ping or over the coin 7/7. Does give Naiman a value trade, but it potentially allows Tice to clear up with a ping here. Kind of a passive play. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I was really expecting the 7/7 to be more proactive, but again, it's one of those things where if Feral Spirit comes out, suddenly you end up having to ping on 4 and you're still taking Tunnel Shrug damage, and then you're hitting 2/3s for the rest of the game with that 7/7, and it ends up dying to a single hit from a spell. But on the flip side, I think that's the way you end up pushing back on the board a bit harder. I guess he wants Tunnel Shrug value off it.
Sure, yeah. Takes a bit of a slow turn there to be able to make a more powerful turn the following.
I like it.
It seems to be working out all right.
Yeah, I mean, the Doomhammer does it the Doomhammer is a big deal coming from Naiman, but it still is a card that is going to be ineffective against the 7/7. You can't face tank that too many times. However, he did pick up his own 7/7 for 4 mana. Well, that gives him a good turn 6. Gives him a good turn 6.
Yeah, this play is definitely heavily influenced by him rolling Taunt Totem. If that wasn't Taunt Totem, I don't think you're tanking this Tunnel Shrug to the face twice.
Ever no. I think you're right.
So right. Taunt Totem is looking at stopping 7 damage. That is a good totem.
I mean, Naiman is weaving in his overload very well here. He's going to have the 4-mana 7/7 on turn 6, and then we'll have 5 open mana on turn 7. That's going to be pretty sweet for him. The question is whether or not Tice can find a way to get on the board big enough that it's going to scare Naiman.
I think he's got a Lava Burst the Trog.
Sure.
Yeah. Otherwise, that just threatens to be able to, with any overload, trade up into your 7/7 with the Doomhammer charge. And if you have that happen, you're probably just dead by your opponent just outboard controlling you. So I like the play there from Tice, recognizing that he's got to get rid of that. And he's behind, but he's got a chance still.
Yeah, the Lightning Bolt here, assuming it had been in his hand already, he might have held on to the Lava Burst, of course, given the fact that he wasted a lot of damage on that Tunnel Shrug.
Mm-hmm.
And the the trade that he has to make here feels bad. He played the 4-mana 7/7 with the hopes that that's what would bring him back in with the initiative, but he's been chipped at by the Doomhammer already for 8 damage dealt for the Doomhammer. So one Trog died, his phase died, everything's dying.
I think you killed the Totem Golem with your face, yeah. You just fight for board at this point. Your opponent's out of cards, they don't have very much damage remaining in their hand. If you can use the Doomhammer to start winning the board, you're going to be able to take favorable trades and slowly grind your opponent out of the game.
Alright, there's a chance that the Flame Juggler hits the Totem Golem with that ping, and that could give Thijs the ability to Lightning Bolt it down, but that means the Wolves stay up. That's still something you can deal with.
Now you can kill both wolves, so that's not too bad. I think that's even better than if it were to hit the Totem Golem.
Yeah, it's all about the damage output at this point. Do you because your 2/3 dies to the 3/4 immediately, which is possibly a problem. Was that Tusker Totemic? It was. Does it win the game? It doesn't. But
it's not bad though. It's not bad still. It gives you some nice board presence here. Healing Totem's really nice. Able to heal up that Totem Golem a little bit. It can never die to the Mage Hero power now. You can get close.
Yeah, does Thijs play any type of mid-range AoE removal? Doesn't seem like it. This card can help him kill the Totem Golem, and he can ping the Searing Totem. So all that's left for Naiman right now is the 3/2 on board. But with 15 health left, that's not a lot of turns for you to die. I think Thijs
really needs to find Doomhammer, like right here, and he has to hope that Naiman has like a 1-drop top deck that isn't too influential on the game, and then maybe he can grind his way back into the game through that. Or maybe he gets Ancestral Knowledge if he runs that, or some 5/5 taunts would be nice.
Yeah, get a Think from Below here would actually be very helpful. This is not it. That is what he wanted the least. But he is still alive, technically. I mean, he can survive. But he's going to concede. Knows full well that coming back on this board is beyond unlikely.
Yeah, a little bit of premature, though. It's possible to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Feral Spirit into Feral Spirit would have stabilized you, but the issue is you die to any draw. So Lightning Bolt or Lava Burst. There's a lot of draws that would have killed you outright. So I guess both players are playing a face Shaman. Naiman did lock down a gain with his. Thijs, however, is going to have to go up against a Paladin and a Warrior with his.
Yeah, you expect to see the N'Zoth Paladin come out here? It doesn't seem like N'Zoth Paladin fits very well in Naiman's lineup. Or maybe do you think it'll be aggressive Paladin?
Murloc. I think it's Murloc. Naiman brought Murloc Paladin at some event, I forget, which was really surprising, but it ended up working out for him, oddly enough.
Control Murloc Paladin?
Yeah, the control of Murloc, where you just play anything. Actually, it's anything can happen Paladin. Let's not confuse the real Murlocs and the fake Murlocs who just charge. Those are not real Murlocs.
It doesn't play the 1/3 guy that makes the little hero dudes that look so adorable.
Right, but it looks like it's going to be more of an aggressive Paladin just based on that opener there. The Horse Rider, the Direwolf Alpha. Those two cards tell me that Naiman's got something else up his sleeve besides Murloc. So, who has the edge in the matchup? I feel like the Divine Shields are very meaningful for Naiman, and that helps him get on board, and Shaman has no way to clear them. But the 1-drops on Thijs' side and the Totem Golem tend to carry a lot of weight in this matchup.
Well, the biggest weakness of the aggressive Paladins is the fact that all of your minions usually have about 1 health, which can cause a lot of problems in the current metagame against classes like Warrior, which run double Ravaging Ghoul, sometimes even Revenges and things like that. So Shaman, though, especially the aggressive variants, don't run any way to deal 1 damage conveniently. There's no Earth Shocks, there's no Lightning Storm, so it can be really tricky to clear a Paladin's board. So I like this deck choice from Naiman. Seems to be targeting Shaman a bit with his lineup and his deck selection, and that's why I was curious and thinking maybe it's an aggressive Paladin just because it seems to fit in with the aggressive theme of all of his decks and the target that's been going on here. So I like it. Thijs may be keen to this as well, just seeing that Naiman's playing the aggressive Shaman and the Tempo Mage. Maybe he's got the read that this could very well be an aggressive Paladin deck.
Yeah, I think the biggest read is your opponent's a golden Paladin. There is no way he played a control deck all the way through. All right, does he win the 50-50 or does he lose it?
At this point, though, I think almost all the competitors have gold in every class, right?
Well, I don't see golden Shaman for Thijs.
Well, maybe he's not on his primary server account, you know? Maybe he has to play on NA or something.
That's correct. I mean,
I guess-
I guess I'm just being facetious with this. It's just you have Golden Paladin. It's a token of aggression. Maybe he just played a lot of Secret Valley. Tice ended up getting completely blown out there. Totem Golem, which is the card that's supposed to win you that early game, ended up doing nothing for him. He even lost the 50-50 on the Flame Juggler, which even though it doesn't seem like much at first glance, is a losing play, like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. And
Nice.
the Mage Hero power is exceptional against the aggro Paladin deck, though. As I said earlier, a lot of the minions are going to have 1 health. A lot of them have Divine Shields, so being able to ping them off is going to be fantastic for Tice. But Rallying Blade comes out, and that is a bummer for Tice. Buffing that Argent Squire, putting out a lot of pressure and allowing clean trades.
All right, so Tice has to figure out what he wants to do next turn, because if he goes for the ping on the 2/2, I'm assuming Naiman holds onto the weapon, which means Tice's thing from below dies. Whereas if he plays the Horse Rider now, then the weapon will be expended on it, in my mind, and then the thing from below is going to be a bit safer from weapon kills.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I like it. And pushes the damage face because Naiman's most likely to potentially make that trade for him, he assumes, but not today. Kings to the face.
Sounds pretty fair. Thing from below can get a discount. If it honestly, if a Stoneclaw Totem comes out, that's a roadblock for the weapon. I mean, you can't play Thing from below here, right? Unless you ping the shield and then you lose your guy, put the 6/6 on 1 health, and you can ping it off. It's not too bad.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind trade the shields and play things from
Right.
below. I don't think it's terrible.
Yeah, the ping that you get on the follow-up turn is what makes it good. The only issue is, does Naiman play Seal of Champions, at least as a 1-of in this list?
I don't know. I have never seen aggro Paladin, so I was
Oh,
kinda
really? Okay.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
I've not seen this archetype in competitive play. I've seen it on ladder a little bit. The lists on ladder don't generally run Seal of Champions, just
Okay, I've
because
seen
most of
quite
your
a bit.
minions have Divine Shield already, and you also run the guy that gives your minions Divine Shield. So
Right, the Argent Protector is definitely a card that finds a good fit in the deck. You usually don't tend to see the Seal of Champions. You will sometimes run into Divine Strength a bit more, which is the 1-mana card that gives +1/+2 to one of your minions. There's a lot of Divine Shield minions in the deck, some that you wouldn't expect necessarily, just because of the Rallying Blade. So you'll even find people play Silent Knight, the 3-mana 2/2 with Stealth and Divine Shield.
really,
Yeah, it's actually not half as bad as you might expect. If you're playing Kings in the list, it can be pretty good.
I don't know about that one, Noxious.
I'm just telling you that's what people have been playing on Aggro Paladin. I can't. I'm not telling you it's amazing, but it does.
Okay, okay.
That's what it does.
All right,
That's what they play.
all right.
Well, that 6/4 is not getting handled just yet. The 1 damage ping didn't come in as handy as we thought it would, so far.
Well, he can handle the 6/4. He just has to take 6 damage.
So what if you opt to play Thing from Below, ping the 2/1, and then clear up everything, and so the 6/4 is forced to trade into Thing, and then you have a Doomhammer turn with a ping on the following turn.
I like it. You need to stop taking face damage. You got to get that guy to trade into your taunt. If that thing goes face one more time, it's going to be upsetting for you, so I'm on board with the plan.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for Tice to justify doing anything but letting that 6/4 smash himself into the Thing from Below. He did take a line of play that didn't kill the 6/4 outright. It was a bit slower than we anticipated, but if Naiman picks up, say, True Server Champion here, that's going to be devastating.
Yeah.
For the time being, though, double Divine Favor,
He's able to cycle 1 off here. He could find Blessing of Might to be able to trade up his 2/1.
that would be insane.
It's Finley, not too bad either.
Yeah, it could
Probably
be life
takes
tap.
Hunter hero power. I don't think you want life tap. You got a Divine Favor in your hand. I don't know. Maybe you do.
I don't know, it really comes down to whether or not you expect Tice's hand to ever give you Divine Favor value.
Sure.
Do you
Well, he's-
expect it at this point? That's one of my questions, because it feels like he has had a very clogged up hand based on the way he's been playing all game.
All right. We got the life tap. So I assume Hunter wasn't in the selection for him. That's my read on that one. Because life tap's like the second best one after Hunter in this situation, I think.
Wow, very good draw there. There was an option to play Doomhammer to start clearing stuff away, but when you pick up the Trog, you're curving it with the frame with the Faceless with a ping. It's hard to say no, and there's only 4 damage coming in.
Ooh.
That's pretty juicy.
Yeah, you can use that on your 1/1, jam it to the face. You don't even need to kill the 7/7 with it.
All
It's
right.
interesting.
With the ping on Tice's side, I mean that 1/1 does not die if you buff it up to 3/3. But how safe do you feel?
Yeah, it makes more sense to play defensively, but I really would have loved to see him just make his guy at 3/3 and just jam it to the face.
I mean, of course you'd like that. I mean,
It's like such a dominance assertion play, you know?
yeah, I see that.
But, yeah,
I mean, I guess are you like getting new dominance assertion classes after you got the new kitten in the house? Is that what you have to do now? You have to make sure he knows who's the boss.
You have to, man. But no, that would be just such a powerful. Like, ignoring a 7/7 and going face is just mentally. It hurts you in a series, and Tice would still have to play another game after this.
That's right, I guess so, right? If he ignores your 4-mana 7/7 and just punches you in the face and you still lose.
Like, it's so tilting.
It's pretty demoralizing, yeah.
Yeah. You gotta have that fact.
Good thing he didn't, because those Feral Spirits were waiting to...
Yeah, that would have been a disaster. Yeah. It would have backfired huge, so well done by Naiman not doing the greedy play.
Alright, this is a pretty good hand for Naiman here. He picks up the Selfless Hero, the Keeper of Demon he can use again to
heal.
quote-unquote heal up, and then he can even Crazed Alchemist a 3/2 into a 2/3, so it actually doesn't trade. But it's kind of a tricky turn, I think. You might leave the 3/1 as it is, but it dies to the ping, so that hurts.
Yeah, you don't want it to die to the ping. I definitely think you hold him in it. He's just trying to figure out what card has Tice been holding on to. Is it another 4-mana 7/7? We see that it's Doomhammer, but it could very well be a 4-mana 7/7. It could be a Lava Burst. It could be a Rockbiter even, but...
Yeah, I mean, there's not been a tremendous amount of opportunities for him to use expensive cards this game, so you expect it to be something on the more expensive side, like, as you mentioned, Doomhammer, another Flame Wreath Faceless. There's the potential for Lava Burst, which is... There's not a lot of high health targets that you've played, so there really wasn't any reason for them to play that. Interesting.
That is interesting.
Okay, now we're talking. Actually, yeah, now we're talking really serious business.
I'm curious why he buffed that one up instead of buffing the other one up, because he wants the Fallen Hero to die, right? So that then his minion gets the Divine Shield. But this way allows Tice to be able to kill all of his minions first, and then...
I think what happens is, if you buff up the 3/1, he ends up not even giving you the shield, because he doesn't ping the 2/1, because the 2/1 dies to the wolf. So essentially you'd have to trade it into the wolf first, and then it'll buff up your other Keeper of Uldamon, which would then still have to smash itself into the wolf, losing the shield in the process. So it wouldn't accomplish much, because the 3/2 would be the only one left over. In this case, though, Tice does find the Doomhammer kill on the 3/4 and denies the Divine Shield anyway.
Oh, there's a true silver champion. That is going to cause a lot of damage really quick.
It's going to be scary.
And I imagine Naiman just drops both of his minions here. Just threatening both of them to connect sets up lethal. But maybe not the Abusive Sergeant, just because that gets pinged off. But it does force your opponent to ping. But they have so much mana to work with anyway that they can likely ping. Oh, I like this play a lot.
No ping.
Really good.
I'm going to weave in those 1 damage every single turn. And that is a pretty dead draw for... And I think that's just it.
That's it, yeah. The Crazed Alchemist holding back to reverse the Abusive Sergeant to set up lethal.
You know, the intuitive play here is play the 2/1 to force a ping and maybe deal more damage. But when you look at the board state, if this weapon connects face for 4, these minions need to both hit for 1 and 2 respectively. So it really doesn't matter that the Abusive has 1 more attack. It's almost never going to matter. So Tice will go down. I feel like we didn't really highlight it too much, but the Flame Juggler 50-50 early in the game with the Totem Golem getting sniped by Abusive Sergeant was absolutely crucial for Naiman taking over, because usually those openers don't get answered very easily by anyone when the Shaman starts like that.
Yeah, winning those 50-50s in the early stages with things like Flame Juggler are pretty game deciding, and we saw it just snowball out of control in Naiman's favor, and Tice was just desperately trying to catch up for the entire game, and then he finally caught up at the end there, and then he died. So we got Face Warrior. So this fits in the theme of Naiman's deck lists. And at this point, after you've seen the Face Paladin and you see the Warrior get queued up, you have to be expecting in the back of your mind potentially the Face Pirate Warrior.
I mean, one of the things that's super interesting here is that you asked me before we started the match, which player do you think will be bringing a full aggro lineup? And I said, well, Naiman is likely, he's the most likely to bring those out, but at the same time, this isn't a very aggro-heavy metagame. It doesn't seem to support it that much. The hyper-aggressive lists aren't the ones that I expected to see, so this is a pretty cool surprise. I mean, I think this Conquest format has been largely a lot of repeats, right, in what people bring. This is very cool.
Yep. Tice nodding his head a little bit. He'd expected it.
It hurts, but you expect it.
It's working out for Naiman. I've not had too much success with playing too many aggro decks as of late, but since a lot of the players in this group, I'd say, are pretty predictable, you can maybe tech your decks appropriately.
All right.
So many players have been playing the same things in tournaments repeatedly. Tice included is a player that just favors what he's good at and favors the decks he's refined and practiced the most, and generally speaking just brings those over and over again and gets better and better at them every time, which is definitely a scary thing, but it does allow you to fall into maybe having your opponent be able to build some crazy Pirate Warrior lineup.
Yeah, and one of the things too that these types of decks do, the types that Naiman brought, the hyper-aggressive list, is you don't usually playtest too much against them when you're practicing with your decks, because figuring those matchups out is likely less relevant than figuring out the most popular list. So when you run up against them in those tournament settings, you have a good idea of what the deck contains, but you haven't necessarily mapped out card for card what's in there. So surprises can happen, and they're usually pretty bad for the player who doesn't know what's going on.
For sure. Tice does not look like he's in a good spot, or in a bad spot against this Pirate Warrior. He has the board back now, and he's at 25 life, and Naiman's sitting on a bunch of burn spells, not too much action in his hand. He has the removal to clear these minions, but that's not really what you want to be doing with Pirate Face Warrior.
Yeah, fighting for the board is not your strong point. You're not Tempo Warrior by any means. You're looking to get those weapons to connect. You're looking for the Blood Cell Cultist to buff up the weapon. There's very little merit to just sitting back and do nothing. Now, Tice did see the first War Axe early in the game, so he's not expecting the second one to come out to hit up those wolves.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, though, he still curves out nicely, right? Like, he's got a turn 5 Golem, and then turn 6 we'll be able to play Doomhammer or 4 mana 7/7.
That works out pretty good for him. Now, do you play the upgrade here just to be mana efficient so you can play, like, 3-drop in hero power the following turn? I would like it. I think it's fine.
It's about getting the Arcanite Reapers to hit face,
Okay.
right? It's kind of like
Sure.
playing the Control Warrior Pirate version where you need to build up that weapon and eventually beat them down with it. And funny enough, you often have those big weapons happen earlier than people find Harrison Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the nature of the deck. And even if you punch and swing for, 6 with Reaper twice, that's more than enough to seal out the damage, usually.
Yeah. Especially against Shaman, which doesn't have any heals. So, does he find the Reaper?
Picks up a hook, which is going to override the axe even if you were to upgrade it. I think at this point, though, the upgrade does seem to make more sense, given the fact that you need to get rid of the Totem Golem afterwards. So everything hurts.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward set of cards there. He does not have a great way to sequence these, not being
What
able
do
to
you
even
think
play
about-
the Pirate.
What do you think about Leroy? Is that, like, if you just Leroy, you trade your axe into the 2/3 and you go face for 6, and you kill a Whelp with Finley, that leaves the opponent with a 3/4 to trade into Leroy and the 1/1 left over. So he does have to make the trades anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's totally unreasonable. We've only seen one Bolt and no Rock Biters from Tice, though, so he has a lot of outs to potentially be able to clear it with Flame Tongues and things like that as well. So, getting the 1/1 out there to control the board. Tice now, I feel like you gotta jam the 7/7. Your opponent doesn't run executes in their deck. It's gonna be just a huge presence, and you have this window of opportunity here where you're not dying for the time being. So while you're not dying, might as well get a 7/7 out there.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few people try to stray away from the full-on aggro pirate, and what they do is they end up going a tiny bit towards the Tempo Warrior, and they add the executes in. That's what the old aggro warriors tried to do back when handlock was a thing, but since then I've seen less of it. But in the new
Reaper.
environment, it seems to be a little bit more prevalent. Now this is really scary though, because you have no means to stop that weapon from pushing damage,
Dude, that
no matter
sets up
what.
lethal.
Yeah, it's GG next turn, assuming everything goes. to the
Holy
face, and no
crap.
Stoneclaw Totem is found.
He's got 2 tries at it. He can play Tuskar Totemic first, and then that can
Totem
give him...
first, right?
Well, you want the highest odds of finding 1 Taunt Totem. So you
Well,
want
if
a
you play-
Tuskar first.
Well, no, because then the totem can't give it to you if you... Oh, yeah, that's right, because...
If your Tuskar on most of the time is going to produce a standard totem, right? It's 58% of the time to produce a standard totem. So if you produce a standard totem, then when you hero power, you have higher odds of finding a taunt totem. You need 1 taunt totem this turn, and then
In
you can
order to
maybe
get,
try and
next turn.
infinite taunt totem the following turn is the whole game plan, hopefully. But he does try and go greedy with it and go for the double taunt totem dream, like he said. And he's very dead. That Arcanite Reaper top deck was just absolutely game deciding here. Saving the upgrade for it was a really good call, and it all just comes together here at the end with Leroy Heroic Strike for 10 bursts out of hand, plus the Arcanite Reaper connecting for 12.
That is exactly what we were referring to. A 6 damage Arcanite Reaper connecting twice, that is usually going to be game. And in this spot, that's exactly what happened. And Naiman's going to take it over Tice with this hyper-aggressive lineup. So the first winner of the day is going to be Naiman. We'll see him afterwards replay those decks against other players. I'm curious to know if the removal of the effect of surprise on the other players will change the way they'll approach this. Because, this works once, maybe not twice.
Well, yeah, we saw even in the ban phase this worked in Naiman's favor, because we saw Tice banning out the Warlock to maybe try and pave way for his Priest and some of his other decks, thinking that maybe Naiman was playing the Reno Lock variant, because Naiman's kind of been known to play Reno Lock, but there's no way it's Reno Lock with this lineup, right? So
I'd be surprised.
Yeah, you can assume it's probably Zoo, which Tice's lineup, all of his decks do pretty well against Zoo, so he kind of gotten bad ban there because of his lack of information going into it. Now, in the later stages of the tournament, everyone knows about Naiman's surprise decks, and it may cause issues for him. It may not be as effective.
Yeah, I'm kind of giddy over the whole aggro pirate warrior being shown in the Conquest tournament. I expected this deck to simply not have any presence today
Really?
and yesterday. Yeah, I didn't see...
Yeah, today, I guess.
Yeah, right, because it's been a very control-heavy tournament overall, I'd say. Like, most players have been bringing very greedy decks, or if not greedy, then on the tempo, mid-range side. But that's been the opposite of what Naiman tried to do, to open with. That being said, guys, that will be the first match of the day. We'll be taking a short break for real, and we'll be back with the second match of the day. Opposing Life Coach against Surrender, the Korean All-Star at this point, I want to say. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back after the break.
From east to west, heroes are sent, seeking glory in the greatest of events. There are knights on noble steeds, those who will bring them to their knees. There are monsters to test their mettle at every turn. Legends will rise based on their merits. There's even pirates riding parrots. It's the grand